I'm John, 38M. My wife Eileen, 36F, and I have been happily married for 10 years. We've always been clear about not wanting kids. Instead, we dedicate our time to our passion project, a small animal shelter we run together. To give you some context, I was adopted when I was 4 years old. My birth mom, Linda, was a drug addict who couldn't take care of me. I never knew my birth father. The memories I have of my early years are hazy, but I remember feeling scared and alone a lot. Child services got involved when a neighbor found me wandering the streets alone, looking for food. I spent a few months in foster care before I was adopted by the Thompsons, the most amazing people I've ever known. Growing up with the Thompsons was like night and day compared to my early years. They showered me with love, stability, and opportunities I never would have had otherwise. They were always open about my adoption and supported me when I had questions, but I never felt a strong desire to connect with my biological family. The Thompsons were my real family in every way that mattered. I excelled in school, played sports, and had a pretty normal childhood. When I was 16, I started volunteering at a local animal shelter. That's where I discovered my passion for animal rescue. The shelter manager, old Mr. Johnson, became a mentor to me. He taught me everything about animal care and the challenges of running a shelter. I spent every free moment there, finding peace and purpose among the animals that needed help. After high school, I went to college to study veterinary medicine. That's where I met Eileen. We were both volunteering at the campus animal welfare club. Eileen was studying business, but she shared my love for animals. We started dating in our sophomore year and have been inseparable ever since. After graduation, Eileen and I moved back to my hometown. We both got jobs, me at a local vet clinic and Eileen at a marketing firm. But our dream was always to open our own animal shelter. We saved every penny we could, and 5 years ago, we finally made it happen. We bought an old farmhouse on the outskirts of town and converted it into a shelter. It's been hard work, but it's the most rewarding thing we've ever done. Now here's where things get complicated. Last year, I got a surprising call from a guy named Mike, 28M, claiming to be my half-brother. Apparently, Linda had cleaned up her act for a while and had Mike when I was 10. Mike said he'd been searching for me for years and wanted to meet. I was hesitant, but agreed to a phone call. During our conversation, Mike shared some details about Linda, who had passed away a few years ago, and asked if I wanted to meet up. He told me that Linda had always regretted giving me up and had tried to find me when she got clean. He said she kept my baby photos and would talk about me often. This information stirred up a lot of emotions I thought I'd dealt with long ago. Part of me was curious about Linda's life after me, but a larger part was afraid of opening old wounds. I politely declined meeting up, explaining that I wasn't interested in exploring that chapter of my life. Mike seemed disappointed but said he understood. Fast forward to last month. I got a call from social services in Mike's state. They informed me that Mike and his wife had died in a house fire, leaving behind their 6-year-old daughter, Emily. The social worker explained that they were trying to place Emily with family members and asked if I would consider taking her in. I was shocked by the news and felt terrible for Emily. The social worker told me that Emily had been in the house when the fire started but was rescued by a neighbor. She's physically okay but understandably traumatized. They also mentioned that Emily has some learning difficulties and might need extra support. After discussing it with Eileen, we decided we couldn't take Emily in. We have no experience with kids, our lives aren't set up for a child, and most importantly, we don't want to be parents. Our shelter takes up most of our time and energy. We often work late into the night caring for sick animals or rescuing strays. It's not an environment suited for raising a child, especially one with special needs. I explained this to the social worker and declined. I offered to help find other family members who might be able to take Emily, but the social worker said they had already exhausted those options. Word got out to my extended adoptive family, and now I'm facing a lot of backlash. My Aunt Carol, who's always been a bit judgmental, called me heartless for abandoning my niece. She said that if someone had done the same to me, I would have ended up in the system. My cousin Tom, who has 3 kids of his own, said I was selfish for choosing animals over family. Even my parents, who have always been supportive, expressed disappointment in my decision. They reminded me of how much love and stability they gave me when they adopted me, and suggested I could do the same for Emily. Their arguments are that Emily is blood family, that she's already traumatized and needs stability, and that Eileen and I are financially stable enough to take her in. They say we have a moral obligation to help her, especially given my own background as an adopted child. But here's my perspective. I never even met Mike in person, let alone Emily. I don't feel a connection to them beyond basic human empathy. I believe family is more than just DNA. The Thompsons chose me and gave me a wonderful life. I didn't choose to have a sibling, and I certainly didn't choose to have a niece. Eileen and I have built our life around our animal rescue work. It's not just a job for us, it's our passion and our purpose. Taking in a child would mean giving that up, which feels wrong to us. We'd have to significantly scale back our operations, which would mean turning away animals in need. Is it fair to prioritize one child we've never met over the hundreds of animals we help each year? Moreover, I worry about the impact on Emily. We're not equipped to deal with the trauma she's experienced or her learning difficulties. Wouldn't she be better off with a family that actually wants children and knows how to care for them? I've tried explaining this to my family, but they're not listening. They keep pushing, saying I'll regret this decision later in life. It's causing a rift in the family, with some relatives barely speaking to me now. Last Sunday's family dinner was incredibly tense, with pointed comments and disapproving looks thrown my way throughout the meal. The whole situation has stirred up a lot of complicated feelings about my own adoption and biological family. I'm grateful for the life I have, but I can't help wondering if I'm somehow betraying the gift I was given by not paying it forward. Am I being an asshole here? Should I reconsider my decision? Or am I right to stick to my guns and the life Eileen and I have chosen? Update 1. It's been a month since my original post, and a lot has happened. I wanted to give you all an update and get your thoughts on some new developments. First, thank you to everyone who shared their perspectives. It gave me a lot to think about. After reading through the comments, Eileen and I had a long talk about our decision. We still feel that we made the right choice for us, but we wanted to see if there was a way we could help Emily without becoming her guardians. I reached out to the social worker handling Emily's case. I explained that while we couldn't take her in, we wanted to know if there were other ways we could support her. The social worker told me that Emily's paternal grandmother, Diane, 65F, had stepped forward to take custody of her. However, Diane was struggling financially and wasn't sure she could provide everything Emily needed. Diane, as it turns out, has her own complicated backstory. She raised Mike as a single mother after his father abandoned them when Mike was just a baby. She worked 2 jobs to make ends meet, which meant Mike often had to fend for himself. This might explain why he was so eager to connect with me. He was looking for the family he never really had. Diane had retired just before Mike and his wife passed away. She was living on a fixed income in a small 1-bedroom apartment. Taking in Emily meant coming out of retirement and looking for a larger place to live. She was willing to do it, but she was understandably overwhelmed. Eileen and I discussed it and decided to offer financial support to Diane and Emily. We set up a trust fund for Emily's education and future needs, and we're helping Diane with some monthly expenses. It's not the same as taking Emily in, but we hope it will provide some stability and security for her. We also reached out to some contacts we've made through our animal shelter work. A friend who runs a child psychology practice agreed to provide Emily with free therapy sessions to help her process her grief and trauma. Another acquaintance who works in special education is helping Diane navigate the resources available for Emily's learning difficulties. Now here's where things get complicated. When my adoptive family found out about our financial support, it sparked a new round of drama. Some family members, like my Aunt Carol, praised us for stepping up and doing the right thing. But others, including my cousin Tom, are now accusing us of trying to buy our way out of responsibility. Tom argued that if we can afford to support Emily financially, we can afford to raise her ourselves. He said that by choosing to help from a distance, we're denying Emily the emotional support and family connection she needs. This has created a divide in the family, with some agreeing with Tom and others defending our decision. The family argument came to a head at my nephew's birthday party last weekend. What should have been a happy celebration turned into a tense debate about our obligations to Emily. My sister-in-law Linda, Tom's wife, suggested that we were being cowardly by not facing up to our responsibilities. My mom tried to play peacemaker, but it was clear she was disappointed in our decision. To make matters worse, Diane reached out to me directly last week. She thanked us for the support, but then asked if we would consider taking Emily for the summers and some holidays. She said it would give Emily a chance to know her real family and give Diane a break. I was caught off guard and told her I'd have to think about it. Diane shared some more details about Emily that made the request even harder to consider. Apparently, Emily has been asking about her other family, meaning us. She found an old photo album of Mike's that included some pictures of me from when we first connected. Emily has been carrying around a photo of me and asking when she can meet her Uncle John. This revelation hit me hard. I've been trying to maintain emotional distance from the situation, but hearing about Emily's interest in me made it feel much more real. I found myself wondering what she's like, if she has Linda's eyes or Mike's smile. Eileen and I are torn. On one hand, we still don't want to be parents, even part-time. We worry that this arrangement could confuse Emily and complicate her relationship with Diane. Our work at the shelter is busiest in the summer months, when we get a lot of abandoned pets and wildlife rescues. Taking care of a child during this time would be incredibly challenging. On the other hand, we feel guilty saying no, especially after hearing how Emily has been struggling to adjust. We can't help but wonder if spending time with us might give her some sense of connection to her parents. The whole situation has made me reflect on my own childhood and the impact my adoption had on me. I remember feeling curious about my birth parents when I was Emily's age, even though I was happy with the Thompsons. I wonder if I'm denying Emily the chance to know her family history in a way I never could. So now we're back to questioning our decisions. Are we doing enough? Should we consider Diane's request? Or are we right to maintain clear boundaries? The family pressure is intense, and it's starting to affect our relationships with people we care about. I'd appreciate any advice on how to navigate this situation. How do we balance our choices with the needs of a child we've never met, all while managing family expectations? Update 2. It's been another 2 months, and I'm back with another update. Things have taken an unexpected turn, and I'm really struggling with how to handle it. After much discussion, Eileen and I decided to decline Diane's request for summer and holiday visits. We felt it would be unfair to Emily to have us pop in and out of her life when we're not prepared to be consistent parental figures. We communicated this to Diane as gently as possible, reaffirming our commitment to financial support, but explaining our reasons for maintaining distance. Diane seemed to understand, but a week later, we received a lengthy email from her. She shared that Emily had been asking about us, curious about her aunt and uncle who were helping them. Diane had shown Emily some old photos of Mike, which included me in the background of one. Emily apparently fixated on this and kept asking when she could meet us. Reading this email was tough. We felt guilty, even though we knew we'd made. The decision we felt was best. But what came next really threw us for a loop. Last weekend, we had a surprise visitor at our animal shelter. It was Diane, with Emily in tow. They had driven over 300 miles to see us. Diane apologized for showing up unannounced, but said Emily had been begging to meet us, and she thought it would be good for all of us. Seeing Emily in person was surreal. She looks so much like Mike. It was almost like seeing a ghost. She has the same curly hair and dimpled smile that I remember from the few photos Mike sent me. But her eyes, they were unmistakably Linda's. It brought back a flood of memories from my early childhood that I thought I'd forgotten. Emily was shy at first, but quickly warmed up when we showed her around the shelter. She was especially taken with a litter of kittens we'd recently rescued. Watching her gentle interactions with the animals, I couldn't help but see a bit of myself in her. It reminded me of how I found solace in animals during the difficult times in my childhood. During their visit, Diane pulled me aside. She confessed that she's struggling more than she let on. Emily's having nightmares and behavioral issues at school. She's been acting out, getting into fights with other kids, and her grades are suffering. The therapist suggested that connecting with family might help Emily process her grief. Diane pleaded with us to reconsider being part of Emily's life, even if just as distant relatives who see her occasionally. Diane also shared some things about Mike that I hadn't known before. Apparently, he had struggled with addiction in his early 20s, much like our mother, but he had gotten clean and turned his life around. He became a counselor at a rehab center, helping others overcome their addictions. Learning this made me see Mike in a new light and wonder what kind of relationship we might have had if I'd been more open to connecting with him. Eileen and I were overwhelmed. We spent time with Emily, and I can't deny there was a connection. She's a sweet kid who's been through so much. At one point, she looked up at me with those familiar eyes and asked, "Are you really my uncle?" The vulnerability in her voice broke something in me. But at the same time, we still don't feel equipped to be parental figures, even part-time ones. Our life is built around our animal rescue work. Just last month, we took in a group of abused dogs from a puppy mill bust. We've been working around the clock to rehabilitate them. It's rewarding work, but it's also exhausting and time-consuming. How could we possibly fit a child into this life? After Diane and Emily left, Eileen and I had a massive argument. Our first real fight in years. Eileen feels we need to maintain our boundaries and stick to our original decision. She's worried that getting involved now will lead to pressure to do more and more until we end up as de facto parents. She pointed out that we've worked hard to build our life and our shelter, and we shouldn't have to give that up. I see her point, but I also feel incredibly guilty. The image of Emily's hopeful face as she asked when she could visit again is haunting me. I keep thinking about my own adoption story and how different my life could have been if the Thompsons had decided they weren't equipped to take me in. Our family is split. Some are furious that we didn't immediately agree to be part of Emily's life after meeting her. My Aunt Carol called and berated me for an hour, saying I was selfish and cruel. On the other hand, my brother, also adopted, supports our decision. He said that adoption and family building should always be a choice, not an obligation. I'm at a loss. How do we navigate this? Is there a middle ground between completely shutting Emily out and becoming surrogate parents? How do we balance our life choices with the needs of a grieving child? Any advice would be deeply appreciated. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share the resolution to this complicated situation. After much soul-searching and many long discussions, Eileen and I made a decision. We realized that while we still don't want to be parents, we could be present in Emily's life in a limited capacity. We agreed to monthly video calls with Emily and Diane, and we invite them to visit our animal shelter twice a year. This compromise hasn't been easy to implement. We had to have several conversations with Diane to set clear boundaries and expectations. We made it clear that we're not taking on a parental role, but rather acting as a sort of aunt and uncle figure to Emily. Diane was initially hopeful we'd change our minds about custody, but she's come to accept our level of involvement. Our first few video calls with Emily were awkward. We weren't sure what to talk about or how to interact with her. Emily was shy and often looked to Diane for reassurance. But as the calls continued, we started to find our rhythm. We talk about her school, our animals, and sometimes she asks questions about her dad. We're careful to maintain appropriate boundaries, positioning ourselves as friendly aunt and uncle figures rather than parental replacements. Emily visited the shelter for the first time 3 months ago. It was bittersweet seeing how much she'd grown since our initial meeting. She spent hours helping us with the animals, and it was clear how much joy it brought her. She was particularly drawn to a 3-legged dog we had recently rescued. Watching her patiently coax the scared animal out of its shell was both heartwarming and painful. It reminded me so much of myself at her age. Before leaving, she hugged us tightly and said she was glad to have us in her life. That moment stirred up a lot of complicated emotions for me. On one hand, it felt good to know we were making a positive impact on her life. On the other hand, it made me question whether we should be doing more. This experience has changed us in ways we didn't expect. While we're still committed to our child-free lifestyle, we've gained a new perspective on family and responsibility. It's made us reflect on our own definitions of family and the obligations we have to others. Our relationship with our extended family is still strained. Some family members think we should be doing more, while others respect the boundaries we've set. Family gatherings can still be tense, with undercurrents of judgment and disappointment. But we're working on rebuilding those relationships, one conversation at a time. Diane has been sending us updates on Emily's progress. Her nightmares have become less frequent, and she's doing better in school. The therapist believes that having some connection to her biological family has helped Emily process her grief. While it's gratifying to know we've helped, it also brings up feelings of guilt about whether we could or should be doing more. Our animal rescue work continues to be our primary focus. We recently took in a group of cats from a hoarding situation, which has kept us busier than ever. Balancing this work with our commitment to Emily isn't always easy, but we're doing our best to make it work. As for Eileen and me, this situation has brought up some challenging conversations about our future. We're still on the same page about not wanting children of our own, but we've started to discuss what other forms of family and community involvement might look like for us as we get older. We're taking it one day at a time, always reassessing to ensure we're doing what's best for Emily while also staying true to ourselves. It's not perfect, and there are still moments of doubt and guilt. But for now, this compromise feels like the right balance for everyone involved. I'm not sure what the future holds for our relationship with Emily. Will she want more involvement from us as she gets older? Will we regret not taking a more active role in her life? These are questions that keep me up at night sometimes. But for now, we're doing the best we can with the decisions we've made.